Mr. Scary Studios. Number 1.
Okay, a little backstory. Behind my family, I come from a family full of physics, and I have some powers. I'm an empath, and I have felt others' feelings. It's not a good feeling to feel before I start rambling. Let's get into this. Well, I was 6 years old, and I was getting ready to go to bed, and I went to bed. And before I was about to go to sleep, there was a knocking on my window. I live on the second story, and it was night, so what could it be? And it couldn't be a person because our power box was. So my next experience, it was a month or two after this, I had a dream, and note, I had this dream here recently too. But this dream was me walking through the hallway, and I went to go check on my dad since he sleeps in the living room. So I went to wake him up. He turns on the TV and we talk for a minute or two. And all of a sudden a black figure appears and opens the door, and then the dream ends. My next experience was I was about 10 years old at the time, and it was around 3 a.m. I woke up and saw that same figure from my dream staring at me. Once I get up to check and see who it is, it goes through the hall, and when it goes through the hall, so do I. I go into the living room, and I remember something circling me, and then I saw something like a figure staring at me and sitting on a love seat. And then I went into the corner and went to sleep. First permission. Well, I just got done talking to the YouTuber Lady Spook. I went to sleep. Note that my sister is pregnant. It will be relevant later. So I go to sleep, and the dream has me in my house. And I go outside and sitting on the porch with my laptop. And I look down to the road and see my father coming, and all of a sudden he died, fell over. Then I look at the door, and the figure from the dream and the experience when I was 10 years old was there. Note this is 6 years later. But I started talking to my biological father on Facebook. When I wake up from the dream, so I start talking to him about the nightmare, and he said death usually comes before birth. So my sister is 3 weeks to a month in her pregnancy, and this scared me half to death because she also has been having troubles with her pregnancy. The next day she went to the hospital. The hospital said she lost her baby. It is very troubling to me this happened. I told my mother about this and she didn't believe me. Here recently this thing has tried tormenting me. I still feel his presence, but here recently he has been quiet, except I've been waking up with scratches here and there. It has been worrying me. No one knows this part yet, and it scares me because I don't want my family to get affected by this shit. Here has been all my experiences, written by Deadly Horror 101 YouTube.
Number 2.
So here's some background info. I'm a 14-year-old female. I am very, very small. Since I'm barely 5 foot and 100 pounds, I look younger than I really am. This occurred a month ago while I was moving. So after the moving truck was loaded, I fell asleep in it. Now flash forward an hour or two later. I am now in a town near my new home. My grandmother is parked in the Burger King parking lot, and I'm still asleep, so my 19-year-old cousin, let's call her Max, came to the passenger door and woke me up to help carry the food. So I agreed. So we're now in the Burger King, and she's ordering, so I tapped her arm and informed I was going to use the restroom. As I exited the restrooms, I noticed an older man about mid-50s, maybe early 60s, staring at Max and then at me. I pay no mind to it since I'm still very groggy. I walked after Max as she tried to get some soda from this new machine. Finally, after a while, she got the soda, and we exited the Burger King. Now, as I'm sitting in the moving truck, sipping on my chocolate milkshake, I see this guy walking towards the truck, and he exclaims, "I know who you are," and stops at the other side, where my grandmother was. She looked rather confused and replied, "Who am I?" And he says, with the exact tone, "The woman of God," and starts rambling about taking care of us girls all the while. I'm terrified. Ideas flashing through my mind of creepy things I've read here on Reddit. Then suddenly he points at me with a dead serious expression and says, "You're a pain in the ass." I am now more confused and scared out of my mind. Then I just laugh awkwardly and mumble sometimes. So he continues rambling until I hear Max calling me, telling me I left my fries in the bag. But I already had my fries. I went over to ask her what she meant, but she changed the topic to the guy. After about 5 minutes, we both agree he's giving off creepy vibes. My grandmother, however, calls my name to inform we're leaving. The old man's car was blocking our path at the time, so he hopped in, and before he moved out of our way, he did the "I'm watching you" motion, and literally mouthed the words, "I'm watching you." Now, this is when I grabbed the phone and called Max, telling her to make sure he didn't follow us. Luckily, he didn't. It just creeps me out to think he watched us order our food and get out drinks. So, creepy Burger King creeper, let's not meet again.
Number 3.
So this happened in 2013. This kid named Ricky moved in next door to me when he was around 12. And for lack of a better term, this kid was pretty much a pussy. I remember one time he fell on his skateboard and didn't land hard at all, and was crying his little heart out in my driveway when he was like 16. So fast forward to when this kid is like 18. By then I'm selling coke and molly pretty heavily, and he's one of my best customers. By now he's hanging out with some pretty shady people, which my parents obviously aren't fans of. My parents also didn't know I ever was selling, because I was pretty good at keeping it under wraps. Ricky was clearly a follower. He went from the skater/emo type to some wannabe thug, which he just wasn't built for. So my parents go to the old Outer Banks, North Carolina, every year for 2 weeks, and I ask if I'll come stay at the house while they are gone, which I was excited about because their house is much better than the shitty little one-bedroom apartment I had at the time. So everything was fine at the house. I had my on and off again girlfriend over all the time, and there was quite a bit of drugs, alcohol going on. I was far from a saint back then. I'll never forget it. It was Thursday night. My girl had left a few hours ago. I should say earlier that day, Ricky had seen me out in front of my parents and had asked me for a front. I told him no, considering I never fronted anyone, and in all honesty, had been using too much of my own shit, so couldn't afford to. He didn't like that very much, and we got in an argument, and I pretty much punked him in front of all his little friends. So by now, it's like 2 in the morning, and I'm obviously nowhere near tired because of all the coke and molly. I'm sitting in the dark watching Netflix in this den side living room my parents had in the downstairs. which has a window going outside, which I had opened. I had paused the TV and was going on my phone texting and on Facebook when I hear something. It's the screen of my window slowly being slid up. I know the sound. I had snuck in and out of the house numerous times growing up. So I slowly get up and watch the window. I clearly see the screen moving very slowly through the curtains. So I walk up to the window, and soon as I cove the curtain at least 3 or 4 times, people scatter. No, sorry, 3 or 4 people scatter. I run out front, but they are booking it down the street. I know it was that Ricky kid and his friends. I didn't see them, but I knew it was those shitheads. I didn't call the cops or nothing, 'cause I wasn't exactly living on the right side of the law. So I just go back in and lock everything up the rest of the week. Go smooth. I never told my parents about it, and I also never seen Ricky again. Called him a few times, which he never answered, which was all the more reason to know it was him, and he knew that I knew. So like a month goes by, and I'm watching the news, and Ricky is on it for murder, which blows my mind. Him and 3 of his friends went out of town, broke into some old couple's home, beat them, tied them up, and stabbed them. Then they burnt down the house after robbing it. They all ended up telling each other, and he got sentenced to 35 years for testifying against his co-defendants. Makes me wonder, if I was asleep when they got in, what could have happened? Here's a link to the news story, and when I got to my parents' house later, I'll take pictures of his house, my house, and the window he almost got in. I'll leave the links in the description to this story, guys. Thanks for watching.